Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by my dad, Steve Davis, and his colleague at Talked About Marketing, David Olney, in which they explore marketing through the lens of their own 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. Apart from their love of words, they really love helping people. So they hope this podcast will become a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David Olney, we both have coffee, don't we?
Virtual pink.
Virtual pink. And I've got my espresso. I'm Steve Davis. Thank you for joining us for this new episode of Talking About Marketing. The theme is why answer people's questions. Inbound versus outbound. David?
I just like thinking about why answer people's questions because I've spent so much of my life being that little kid who never shut up and said, why? And then I spent 19 years encouraging students to ask why. So to me, it's the most natural thing in the world.
Whereas here's me, I was just laying a trap when you answered me asking that question. I was just going to sit back and bask in my cleverness.
Well, you can do that anyway. You'll have a great time.
All right, let's get underway.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. The aim of life is self-development. To realise one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde.
For the personal topic that I want to look at today that helps us with our own journeys as business owners or leaders, I'm going to, we actually say in the intro, we colour outside the lines. I'm going to where lines are measured in abstracts as much as in any reality, the field of mathematics, David Olney.
I'm just going to run screaming now because at a certain point in high school, mathematics got too hard.
Okay. Well, look, this is a snippet I'm going to play for us by an Oxford professor of mathematics, Professor Marcus du Sautoy. I hope I've pronounced Marcus's name rightly. I'm taking this from one of your other podcasts that you do, David, the podcast called Blind Insights with David Olney. I've got your permission.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Marcus had written a book called Thinking Better, The Art of the Shortcut. And as I was listening, there was one bit in his interview that made me think of all the business people I've had in front of me when running workshops, and in particular my social media workshops, because little fun fact, I ran the first ever social media marketing workshops in South Australia. Full stop. That was in late 2005. So I've been on this whole journey. And a lot of the early ones were very practical. People would bring their computers, their laptops, their iPads, whatever they had, and we would learn how to tweet and to create a Facebook post and use tools like Hootsuite, etc. And there was always a high mixture of excitement, a sort of a gung-ho spirit as people sat in rooms and we did this. But I try to make sure that all my workshops have a follow-up mentoring component so I get to do some one-on-one time. And what I found, depending on how soon after the workshop this happened, is for some business people, that initial bravado had sapped away. They'd lost their oomph or their drive, they'd gotten themselves stumped by something and had put some of this into the too hard basket. You might have had experiences like this with your students at uni, David.
Very often with students, the too hard basket was when they couldn't see the reason for going forward. So it was less a technical problem normally, more than a so what problem.
Oh, well, that brings into this snippet. So let's set this up. So he's got this book, The Art of the Shortcut, etc. And I thought this was relevant. He just had this reflection about knowing that something you're about to do is going to get hard in the immediate future, which can allow us to set ourselves up for that and be prepared, as well as making some decisions about what we're going to do going forward. Let's have a listen.
You can't avoid hard work often in learning the shortcuts. I think, David, you said that it requires some effort to learn these skills, but once you've got them, they then become just amazing new tools to be able to do things much quicker. And it actually relates to an important distinction that I try to make in the book, which is I'm not trying to, I was a lazy teenager. I didn't like doing work. But actually, as an adult, I really love my work. I love spending my time doing my subject. And I made this distinction, which Aristotle made, between two different sorts of work. I mean, David, you maybe correct me if I've got this wrong as a philosopher, but the idea of praxis and proesis, work which you love doing for the sake of doing the work, and the work which is just about attaining a goal. So for me, these shortcuts are meant to be a powerful way of getting to your goal, if that's all you're interested in. But if you actually just love the work you're doing, then you don't want a shortcut. I talked to Robert McFarlane, who's a climber. He said, well, I could take a shortcut to the top of the mountain. I could take a helicopter, just drop me off. But that completely defeats the object. I want to spend time battling nature and taking several days to get the top of the mountain.
So to me, the key point I want to take from that quote or snippet from Marcus is directly applicable to you the next time you're preparing to go to a workshop or to learn something new, especially with social tools, but not just. I mean, there's a whole lot of AI, artificial intelligence tools. There's a lot of online services you can buy, switch to the cloud. And a lot of marketing around these emphasizes this will be so easy. This is going to change your life. But I think the learnings from Marcus's point and just real life, our long-term exposure to seeing these cycles back and forth, is that we should always be prepared to understand that hard work will be involved in anything new, and there will be a call upon us to apply ourselves to provide some discipline and, as David alluded to just before we heard the snippet, have that vision about how we're going to use them, what part they're going to play in our businesses or organizations. And the second point, before I get a comment from you, David, is I think that distinction he made between praxis and proesis. So praxis, doing activities that were good, enjoyable to do in their own sake. And I've got to confess, when I think about blogging, I love the art of putting a blog together. I encourage almost all of my clients to blog, and I see that not all of them share that same thought. They're more at the proesis end, which is I just want to get this job done. I want to see it completed, and that's okay, especially if we know that it's an important job to be done. So that was a takeaway for me that I just thought, from a mindset perspective, gets any of us. I'm not just talking to you as our listener, but to myself as we encounter something new. I think if we're ready to know there'll be some turbulence, we're going to have a better chance of seeing it through to the other side of the clouds.
My first response to that is, for me, I often think in terms of means and ends. If I'm only doing something to get a particular end, then the whole journey is just going to feel like, why am I doing this? Oh, because of the end. Why am I doing this? Oh, because of the end. And that is not a very rewarding sensation. So for me, the sooner I can realize that something may have a good endpoint, but also if I can get some joy or some learning or a different experience out of the process of working on it, that is infinitely more rewarding if you can get something out of the process and the endpoint. So where possible, just reflect if you can find a way to engage more in the moment of the things you are doing, because it makes spending time at least more bearable, most likely far more enjoyable.
I love this because I've come at it from the other end, and you sort of reversed engineered some joy, finding those ways of joy in the process. And I think whatever gets us to have a resilient buoyancy as we do these things, we will be better off for it, because remaining static possibly isn't a recipe for great success or progress.
In physics, it's called entropy, and entropy ends up with a cold, dark universe.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. Oscar Wilde.
Why answer people's questions? That's our theme for the main part of the episode this week, or fortnight, I should say. Inbound versus outbound, the whole thing of answering questions. David, why should we answer people's questions when we're wearing our marketing hats?
There are so many reasons why we should that it's actually difficult to work out where to start. So I think context is probably a good place to start with.
Mm-hmm.
So in about 2013 or 14, Nicholas Carr wrote a book called The Shallows, where as a very successful journalist and author, he went, why can't I concentrate? Why can't I sit for any length of time and read a book? Why can't I stay on a single web page and read the whole article from start to finish? And the context we now live in is a context of constant disruption, interruption. So for a very long time, outbound marketing was often called interruptive or disruptive marketing. An ad would pop up and disrupt you from what you were doing. And if it was colourful and entertaining, well, maybe that was okay because you weren't interrupted and disrupted constantly.
Contact me today to get some help from Talked About Marketing. Is that an example of what you're talking about, David?
Well, thankfully that was helpful, but still, it's a good example. If it had been, hi, do you want to buy Woof dog food? Woof will make your dog go meow. Now, that would have been a horrible non sequitur. Now, maybe we would have laughed, but we would have lost track of what we were doing. And in a world where people were not constantly distracted, disrupted, interrupted, it kind of worked, but cost more and more and had to become more and more spectacular. By about 2005 to 2007, so the period where you're starting to go out and run social media workshops, people are starting to get overwhelmed by things they're actually interested in, like their social media feed, people they want to hear from, let alone things they don't want to hear from. So at this point, the realization kicks in with some very smart marketing people that if you actually give people answers to their questions about things they're concerned about or things they want to achieve that are their dreams, they want to know how to get there, if you give them that information, they will consume it, they will build a relationship with you, they will trust you, they will purchase from you, and they will be your greatest advocates because they feel like you treated them with respect. And that in a world where interruption is just everywhere all the time, treating people with respect and giving them the answers they want changes perceptions and outcomes really dramatically.
But it's also the main reason why I want to interact with a brand is I have a problem that I need a solution to, or I have a goal I'm trying to achieve and I need them as one of the stepping stones to help me get there. I'm not looking to a brand to entertain me. It just so happens that if you have led by some entertainment and you, in the course of doing that, provided some answers for me, then it's moved forward. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing when I talk to people about getting involved on social media with a business/marketing hat on. We're in our social media places to socialize, to goof off, to catch up with friends. We haven't gone there to be sold to. And to succeed, we need to be aware of that context. And otherwise, we're like an uncle at a birthday party trying to be cool, which is a self-reference to me. But, it just, and standing out. Whereas if we do capture this inbound intuition, this inbound DNA, then we're really there to serve, firstly, and serve by earnestly trying to make life better, to make the world better for the customers we've deemed are the ones we're here to serve and have a solution that's relevant to.
You've tapped into something very important there, and that is that a lot of the time, if we're on social media, we're just passively seeing what's there to entertain ourselves. And an ad is in the main just going to annoy us. And we're going to flick past in the 2.5 seconds. Or because it's only 2.5 seconds, we might give something. Well, it's so easy to just flick to the next thing, which will be more engaging because it will entertain us. And not all marketing can be entertaining. We need to accept that when people are in that passive state of wanting to be entertained, maybe we can entertain them, but that no longer means we can move them toward taking our product seriously and thinking seriously of buying it. If someone's driving down the street and on one side of the street they see the golden arches and on the other side they see the sign for a local bakery, their brain is going to decide in 2 seconds if they're hungry and which thing they feel like.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the few occasions where that 2 seconds is enough, where it's low consequence, low cost. I'm hungry now or I'm not hungry now. Do I want to go to the bakery? Do I want to go to Macca's? Or am I committed to eating healthy? And now I've realized I'm hungry. I'm going to go home, grill a piece of chicken and make a salad. There are so many options there, but nothing in that 2 seconds is going to be really particularly persuasive unless it works in that 2 seconds. And most companies are doing something more meaningful than that. You do need to think about what they're offering for more than 2 seconds, which means what a company needs to put in front of an audience has to be stuff that gives people a way to go, well, I'm interested in this, and this is good information, and it's treating me with respect, and it's answering the questions I've got right now, and it's giving me an opportunity to say, if I want more information, if I want to know about offers, but it's not interrupting me. It's asking me how engaged I want to be.
So the deeper discipline here is, yes, we've got the case where you're proactively putting out some messaging to go and be in front of people, which hopefully is ticking these boxes. But to have that ready, doing the groundwork first is to look back at the content you've got. And if we're talking digital marketing, and just about everything uses that as a foundation these days from which we move on from, I think being tough with ourselves and saying, are the pages on our website actually designed to answer questions, or have we just gone through the form of putting up stuff that looks like it's filling, or we're just tipping a whole lot of gunk there? Because if it's actually everything is curated. I was with some clients on last week who are revisiting the website and realizing that a lot of the website just talks about them and the tools they use, and I'm like an afterthought as a visitor. And so I think getting this right from the outset is really critical. Like a farmer putting the effort into preparing all the biodynamics of the soil and everything's tickety-boo there before hoping that something's going to come from the seeds.
I think what we could say about so many websites that were designed without inbound in mind is so many websites are the ultimate explanation of, if you got a job with this company, what are the people like? What are the tools like? Broadly, what do they do if you're an industry insider? But for the client who wants to buy the product or service, most websites are really bad. The majority of websites that I go and check out just to get data to potentially work with clients and to look at what opposition, companies are doing are really bad. So despite the fact that we are now at least 15 years into the quote-unquote inbound marketing world, there's a reason, I think, why the companies that do get their websites right and answer people's questions and help them build trust and understanding, why the companies that do this do disproportionately well, because a lot of other companies are doing disproportionately badly.
So we almost need to have someone, whether it's your marketing person or someone who knows the business, to be a cross between devil's advocate and earnest inquirer, and to sit down and look at, starting with the website and giving us feedback. Does it do anything for me? Does it answer a question? Because this whole term of inbound means that there's the content there that makes me want to pull myself into your world. I want more. You have signaled to me that what you've got is answering my questions. And so I am intrinsically motivated now to get closer to your orbit because I want the good stuff. And you're not having to trick me into your world. I want to enter your world because you've sent that signal already. Would that be a fair summation?
That is a fair summation, and a good way to understand this is to think in terms of something like, Barbara Minto's pyramid principle for communication, where Barbara Minto was the first woman to become a partner at McKinsey, so huge consulting firm, and she realized that so often when they were working on a problem or working out how to explain something to someone, they didn't have a consistent methodology. And she came up with a methodology for communication of, at the top of anything, you have the question. What are we looking for? What are we after? What is the problem? Immediately after that, you write the answer, and then you write 3 good reasons for the answer. And only after that do you have all the evidence. But you give people, first and foremost, the question that this page or document is about, the answer to the question stated in a single sentence, and then 3 good reasons why it is the answer and why the easiest thing to do is just go with it. And here's all the research to back it up. But I don't bombard you with the research first. I give you the conclusion first so you can decide if you want to invest more time in reading our document, looking at our webpage, signing up to get an email that will give you more information. Whatever it is, you as the customer get to decide if you want to know more, because we've given you something important to start with so that we value your time and your intelligence and your integrity.
That's not only a great model that I use for helping clients write blogs, blog post articles. That's exactly the formula, but it also whets my appetite for when we revisit in a future episode Methods of Persuasion by Nick Kalendra, because a lot of that taps into what he's kicked up, the dust he's kicked up from his research from the realm of psychology.
Absolutely. Like, everyone ends up at the same amazing good point on most of these things about treating people with respect. And even with inbound, what's unique about inbound is it takes all the different tools that can be put together to say, you have a need, or you have a concern, or you have a dream, and we can help you with that. But we can only help you if you see that we've done the work to have a good product, a good service, and you need to decide that before you interact with us, because we don't want to waste time, trying to persuade you with platitudes. We want to persuade you with evidence, and we want to persuade you with examples, and we want to make sure that there's some trust, because the ultimate way now to get through to people who are too affected by a context of disruption and interruption is if a friend or family member says, hey, I dealt with these people and this product, and the product does what it says, and the people treated me with respect and like I have a brain.
Yeah, well, that's our first pass at the topic of inbound. It'll come up again and again, and we'll come at it from different angles so that we can get a good grip on it. If it's still feeling a little elusive to you, there'll be some more things to read in the show notes in relation to this. But I think that's a nice point to pause on this particular topic, because inbound marketing, it's not going away. In fact, David, I'd almost think a little ready reckoner, if you wanted to do something specific right now, is have a look at some of the blogs you've written or the pages you've got on your website or even brochures, and ask yourself, in the voice of your customer, who gives a fig? Because if that's not obvious that there's a what's in it for me for them from the outset, we've got some re-engineering that needs to happen.
Yep. Basically, your About page is your opportunity to tell your story in a way that shows a bit of a struggle and that shows you overcoming it. And almost every other page should help someone to understand how you can help them.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. I asked the question for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity. Oscar Wilde.
I've had a flurry of emails from clients just recently, and there's no real reason it's just happened. This is coincidental, but these sorts of emails come all the time. So I thought I'd pluck one out and read it for our problems section today, because there's a simple way to respond if you get one of these. And it is an email. This is one I received from Michelle from Hok Homes, great home builders in SA, really specky stuff, by the way. And what Michelle did, and I love that she did this because I have tried to make sure everyone I've ever worked with has ongoing permission to, if they've got an email that's suspicious, just bounce it past me, because I could normally spot the BS from a million miles away because I get to see so many of these things. And she took me up on this. She just flicked this email with the question, do I need to do anything with the below? And what was below was, what are the things that make my blood maybe not boil, but just simmer unhappily, David? Are these systemic emails that come from cPanel. Now, cPanel is a bit of infrastructure, a bit of software that many web hosts use to hold our websites, especially WordPress websites, and it's wonderful. But some of the inbuilt error messages that have been built by nerds for nerds, yes, lack any sort of warm skills of communication.
So they need a dose of pyramid principle.
They do, which we were just talking about. So instead, yes, exactly. So this is the message. AutoSSL has renewed hokhomes.com.au's domain validated SSL certificate, but it lacks 8 of the website's domains. And in big red, horrible stuff that reminds me, I'm going to show my age here. I grew up watching a show called Lost in Space, and really bad science fiction. And this robot would always go,
warning, 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 Steve Davis.
That's right. And it's just, and so if you're a business person or you're in a role in an organization, this is not what you do all the time. It can knock you for a 6. You can think, oh no, I've lost my security certificate. You haven't. So 2 things. Firstly, to understand that for many businesses, they rely on these beautiful certificates that are automatically regenerated every month by their web host, and it normally just goes tickety-boo. However, if for some reason there is a milliseconds gap between the closing of the old certificate and the regeneration of the new, these error messages get triggered. I mean, they could be redundant a moment after they've been sent, but they're still going to sit in the inbox and cause anxiety. And so the biggest thing you can do if you get anything screaming about your SSL, your security certificate, the thing that makes your website have HTTPS instead of HTTP, is to go to the website, open up a browser, have a look at your website. Most of them, no matter which browser you use, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, they have a little padlock symbol right next to the domain name of whatever website you're looking at. And if there's a nice closed padlock, that's good. Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're just closed. That's what we want. It means there's a nice, safe, secure connection. However, if it's broken, it's open, or it itself is red, then you actually know there is something amiss with your security certificate, and you do need to talk to either your webmaster, your trusted advisor, whoever it might be, because they can typically be remedied very quickly, and you do not want a broken SSL status, because most browsers these days, if you have got a faulty security certificate or none, will warn users away from your site. They'll say, we do not trust. This site could be used for stealing your information. Do not proceed. So it's important, it's serious, but the quick little check is just that. Check the website. If it's all secure, all is good. Get on with your life and your day. If not, ask.
And nerdy nerds who create those emails, even if it's only a millisecond that the SSL is not good, why don't you send a follow-up email that now says it's good again?
Our 4 Ps. Number 4, perspicacity. The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. Oscar Wilde.
Right, time for our final segment of the episode. This is where we look at perspicacity. Isn't that a great word, David?
It's awesome. It makes me want to tap dance in the rain.
Which all good words should, by the way. So this is where we look at something from our past to see if it can sharpen our thinking today. And we're going to take you back to a very famous it's now a case study where Dave Carrol, a musician, was from Canada, was hopping onto a plane to go and perform a gig, and looked down on the tarmac, and the United Airlines cargo handlers were throwing his guitar through the air at each other. And sure enough, when he got to the other end, it was broken. Got absolutely no help or support from anyone at United. They didn't care. And so he created a song called United Breaks Guitars. Let's have a listen to a little snippet, and we'll put the full video on the show notes.
The band and I exchanged a look, best described as terror, at the action on the tarmac, and knowing whose projectiles these would be. So before I left Chicago, I alerted 3 employees who showed complete indifference towards me.
David Olney, isn't that the smartest way to get attention when customer service doesn't care?
It was an outstanding thing to do when you figure it was so many years ago to think, okay, I'm going to go home, write a song, make a video, and upload this to YouTube, and make sure that what went up was such an engaging piece of content that it had the power to literally humiliate a major airline.
And it worked. They actually lost 10% of their market share, United Airlines at that point, which basically cost $180 million to their shareholders. And I used it in a lot of workshops at that time, as did anyone else talking about social media. What do we take from that for today? At the moment, at the time of recording, poor old Qantas is dropping flights left, right, and centre as it tries to recover from the way it sort of dropped its workforce during COVID with baggage. I had baggage that went missing. I heard a whisper that there was actually a flight where all the bags missed the flight. Haven't had that verified, but I heard it being talked about. What do we do today? Is there anything from the United Breaks Guitars story that is relevant to businesses or consumers today?
I think the interesting contrast that leaps into my mind straight away with this is today you would film this out of the window because you haven't bothered to turn your phone off yet. And you would be uploading it to social media before the plane takes off, and you turn your phone onto flight mode, and it may go viral for an hour, 2 hours. Maybe it gets a positive impact with the airline. But I don't think now it would be possible to get anywhere near the impact that Dave Carrol got by writing a song with his band, performing it, and putting it up on YouTube to be watched millions of times. Again, it was the advantage of a world with so much less content that the combination of slick content about a real issue, and everyone had some version of a horror story about airlines. It's part of travel. But for a musician to lose their prized guitar because people viewed it as somewhere between a basketball and a football, that was something that should be significant content and should have a significant impact on the behavior of the airline and its value. But today, would it, maybe it wouldn't even go viral. If you're a tiny band and you're more or less unknown and you put it up immediately, it was the middle of the night and you didn't tag it well, how many people would actually watch before it got overwhelmed by the next cat video?
It'd be an interesting thing. I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that. I think the wild card here, there's 2 factors. There is the complete wash of content everywhere, and I think you're right. The short time spans, the way that the social networks are churning through with its algorithms to keep everything fresh. But a well-written song could actually, I think, still take root, at least in a small niche community. And if that happens to be the community that someone connected to the business causing the issue is part of, it still could get listened to, because we are living in that era, aren't we, David, of not so much buyer beware, but seller beware, because being able to leave reviews does sting. Sometimes, obviously, it's abused, but it does sting and does get messages through.
And I think the trick here would be to take the video out the plain window, to then put that up, to go home and write the song, to then put the song up on YouTube with the link to the real video, and to then, in the comment section, ask everyone who's had a problem with the same airline to please add their comment and, where possible, their photo. So if you structured it right now to integrate, you could probably still get a big impact. But you can't just hope the system would work anymore. Viral's not going to happen on its own anymore. Viral now needs to be structured, would be my take.
I'd love it if you asked people to contribute their stories and you kept adding verses to the song that were making use of new material that everyone then has ownership in, who's been chipped in. Well, then you start building a core group around you that has a vested interest in this going crazy.
Yeah, the United Breaks the World playlist.
Yes.
27 YouTube clips of the same band, with little bits, say 30 seconds of footage of everyone discovering something means a lot to them is broken, or that their bag that was meant to end up in Alabama has ended up in Turkey.
Yes, which is lovely because I haven't been to Turkey for many, many years, and maybe the safest thing is to actually travel in your bags, or not. Well, there you go.
I don't think I even want to comment on that, because that could be a very long trip if you end up in Turkey.
Well, it could be. United Breaks Guitars. The main takeout for today is we can't just rinse and repeat. We have to be mindful of the new context in which things are happening. But it doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater either.
No, have a better content plan and work out how you're going to get other people engaged. Make it clear what you're trying to achieve and how you would like them to engage with you to get a better outcome. People still care. They're just overwhelmed by the amount of stuff and need a little bit more guidance.
And I should have reworded that to say, don't throw the guitar out with the guitar case. That's all for this episode. I hope you found some useful, helpful things. We'd love to hear from you too. So flick your questions to us, your comments to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. Love to hear from you. David Olney, thank you again.
Thank you very much, Steve Davis, and thank you, listeners.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. And if you found it helpful, please share it with others. Steve and David always welcome your comments and questions, so send them to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. And finally, the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.